The space station called Emerald Drift floated in the darkness between stars. It was a massive structure, built by many species working together over hundreds of years. Thousands of aliens lived and worked here. They came from 47 different worlds, speaking different languages, eating different foods, and looking nothing like each other. Among all these strange creatures, there was one human. Her name was. She was 29 years old with short black hair and calm dark eyes. She wore simple gray clothes and heavy boots. On her hip she carried a pulse pistol. On her wrist she wore a scanner, a small device that could detect life forms, measure danger, and give warnings. Worked as a security consultant. This meant that nervous merchants hired her to protect them and their cargo. They paid her well because humans had something other species did not have. Humans had reflexes, dangerously fast reflexes. Today, her client was a trader named. Were small creatures about 4 feet tall with soft blue skin and 4 large eyes. They were known for being excellent at business and terrible at fighting. Was a perfect example of his species. He was rich, clever, and scared of almost everything. "Are you sure this route is safe?" asked for the 5th time. His voice was high and worried. Checked her scanner. The device showed a map of the lower decks. Green dots meant friendly life forms. Yellow meant unknown. Red meant danger. Right now, everything was green. "It's safe," she said. "We've walked this path 3 times this week. Nothing ever happens down here." Made a nervous sound. His 4 eyes blinked one after another. "I have heard stories, bad stories, about the lower decks." "Stories are just stories," said. She kept walking. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. The lower decks of Emerald Drift were old. The walls were gray and dirty. The lights flickered sometimes. Most species avoided this area because it felt uncomfortable, but did not mind. She had grown up on Earth, in a city where the streets were dark and the nights were long. This was nothing compared to that. They passed storage rooms filled with boxes. They passed old machinery that no longer worked. They passed empty corridors where their footsteps echoed. Then the lights went out. Stopped walking. Her hand moved to her pistol. Behind her made a small sound of fear. "Stay calm," said. Her voice was quiet and steady. "The power systems here are old. This happens sometimes." But even as she said this, she knew something was wrong. Her scanner was beeping. The screen was no longer all green. 3 yellow dots had appeared ahead of them. Yellow meant unknown. Unknown meant danger. "What is it?" whispered. "What do you see?" Before could answer, the emergency lights came on. Red light filled the corridor. Everything looked like blood. And then she heard it. A sound like metal scraping against metal. It came from the vents above them. Pulled out her pistol. She pointed it at the ceiling. Her scanner beeped again. The yellow dots had turned red. The screen now showed a message. Threat assessment, moderate. "Get behind the cargo," told. "Stay low, stay quiet, do not move." Did not need to be told twice. He ran to a large shipping crate and hid behind it. His 4 eyes were wide with terror. Did not hide. She stood in the middle of the corridor and waited. The vent cover fell from the ceiling. It crashed to the floor with a loud bang. Something crawled out of the opening. It was not like anything had seen before. The creature had a hard shell like an insect. It had 6 legs and 2 long arms with sharp claws. Its head was flat and wide with many small eyes. It moved fast, very fast. It saw, it screamed. Fired twice. Blue light flashed from her pistol. The first shot hit the creature's chest. The second hit its head. The creature fell to the ground and did not move again. Another one came out of the vent, and another. Scanner updated. Threat level moderate, 2 hostiles remaining. She moved without thinking. Her body knew what to do. She stepped to the left as the first creature lunged at her. Its claws passed through empty air. She fired once and it fell. The third creature was smarter. It did not attack directly. It circled around trying to get behind her. Turned with it, she kept her pistol raised. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady. This was what she was trained for. This was what humans were good at. The creature jumped, dropped to one knee. The creature sailed over her head. Before it could land, she twisted and fired 3 shots into its back. It crashed to the floor and slid across the metal, leaving a trail of dark blood. Silence returned to the corridor. Stood up slowly. She checked her scanner. No more red dots, no more yellow dots, only green. "Is it over?" His voice came from behind the crate. He sounded like he was about to cry. "For now," said. She walked to one of the dead creatures and looked at it closely. The body was still warm. The shell was harder than it looked. The claws were sharp enough to cut through metal. She had never seen this species before, and she had seen many species in her years of work. Her scanner showed the same confusion. Species unknown, origin unknown, database none found. This was strange. The Galactic Alliance had records of millions of species. For something to be completely unknown was rare, very rare. "We need to report this," said. She reached for her communication device. But before she could use it, the lights flickered again. Her scanner beeped loudly. More dots appeared on the screen. Yellow at first, then red, then more red, then more. Counted quickly, 10, 20, 30. The dots kept appearing. Her scanner updated with a new message. Threat level updated, severe. Made a sound like a dying animal. What does that mean? What does severe mean? Looked at the screen. She looked at the vents above them. She heard more scraping sounds coming from everywhere at once. "It means," she said calmly, "that we should start running." She grabbed by his collar and pulled him out from behind the crate. The little stumbled but did not fall, pushed him ahead of her and started moving toward the nearest exit. Behind them the vents opened. Creatures poured out like water from a broken pipe. They screamed as they came, a terrible sound that filled the corridor. Ran, she did not look back. She did not need to. Her scanner told her everything she needed to know. The creatures were following them, and there were too many to fight. For the first time since she had come to this station, felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt interested. She smiled. Ran through the red-lit corridors with struggling to keep up behind her. The trader was not built for running. His short legs moved as fast as they could, but it was not fast enough. The creatures were gaining on them. Could hear their claws clicking on the metal floor. She could hear their screams echoing off the walls. Her scanner showed their positions, a wave of red dots flowing through the corridors like blood through veins. "I cannot run anymore," gasped. "Please, I cannot." Did not slow down. She reached back, grabbed his arm and pulled him along. "You can, you will." They turned a corner. Ahead of them was a junction, a place where 3 corridors met. The left path led to the hangar bay, where ships waited. The right path led deeper into the station. Straight ahead was a dead end. Scanner mapped the area quickly. It showed hostile signatures in all directions. "Escape ROUTES, COMPROMICD. No," whimpered. "No, no, no." Looked at the ceiling. There were maintenance panels above them, openings that led to the service tunnels. These tunnels ran between the walls and floors of the station. Workers used them to fix pipes and wires. They were small and dark and cramped. They were also the only way out. "Can you climb?" asked. Stared at her with all 4 eyes. "Climb? Do not climb. We are ground creatures. We stay on the ground." "Today you are a climbing creature." Holstered her pistol and grabbed him around the waist. Before he could protest, she lifted him up toward the ceiling panel. "Push it open," she ordered. "Use your hands." Was shaking so badly that he almost dropped twice, but fear is a powerful motivator. His hands found the panel and pushed. It opened with a loud creak. "Climb in now." Pulled himself into the dark opening. It was ugly and graceless, but he made it. Jumped, caught the edge of the opening and pulled herself up in one smooth motion. She closed the panel behind her just as the first creatures reached the junction below. For a moment there was only darkness and the sound of breathing. Was panting like he had run 1,000 miles. Was breathing normally. "We need to keep moving," she whispered. "They will find this opening soon." The maintenance tunnel was small, had to crawl on her hands and knees. Being shorter could move a little more easily, but he was still slow. Every few seconds he would bump into a pipe or a wire and make a small sound of pain. Below them, through the metal floor, could hear the creatures searching. They were not stupid. They knew their prey had gone somewhere. Her scanner glowed softly in the darkness. She checked it as she crawled. Threat level critical. Recommend immediate evacuation. Immediate evacuation, muttered to herself. Good advice, very helpful. What did you say? Whispered from behind her. Nothing, keep moving. They crawled for what felt like hours. In reality, it was probably only 15 minutes, but time moves strangely when you are hiding from monsters in the dark. The tunnel branched in several directions, chose her path based on her scanner's map. She was trying to get to the upper decks, where there were more people and more security. If she could reach a safe zone, she could call for help. But the creatures were spreading through the station faster than she expected. Every time she found a clear route, more red dots would appear and block it. They are everywhere, said. His voice was very quiet now. He had moved past fear into something deeper, a kind of numb acceptance. We are going to die here. No, said, we are not. How can you say that? Look at your scanner, look at the numbers. There is no way out. Stopped crawling. She turned to look at in the dim light. His 4 eyes were wet with tears. His blue skin had turned pale. Listen to me, she said. Her voice was calm and firm. I have been in worse situations than this. I have been surrounded by enemies with no weapons and no plan. I have been left for dead in places you cannot imagine, and I am still here. But these creatures are just creatures. They bleed. They die. I have already killed 3 of them today. Started crawling again. The only question is how many more I need to kill before we get out. They continued through the tunnel. Arms were starting to ache. Her knees hurt from the hard metal floor, but she did not complain. Complaints were for people who had time to complain. Suddenly her scanner beeped loudly. A new red dot appeared very close, coming from ahead. Stopped. She held up her hand to signal to stop as well. Something was in the tunnel with them. She could not see it yet. The tunnel curved ahead, blocking her view, but she could hear it now. That familiar scraping sound of claws on metal. Slowly, quietly, she drew her pistol. The weapon hummed softly as it charged. The creature came around the curve. It was smaller than the one she had fought before, maybe a scout or a young one. Its many eyes reflected the glow from her scanner. It saw her. It opened its mouth to scream. Fired first. The shot lit up the tunnel like lightning. The creature's head exploded. Its body slumped to the floor. But the damage was done. The scream had started even if it had not finished. The other creatures would have heard it. Her scanner confirmed this. The red dots below them were moving now, moving toward their position. Run, said. No more crawling, just run. They scrambled through the tunnel as fast as they could. No longer cared about being quiet. Speed was more important now. Behind them, she could hear panels being torn open. The creatures were entering the tunnels. Up ahead, she saw light. Real light, not the red emergency glow. It was coming from a grate in the floor, an opening to a lit corridor below. She kicked the grate open and dropped through. The fall was about 10 feet. She landed in a crouch, her pistol already raised and scanning for threats. The corridor was empty. Dropped down after her. He landed badly and fell to his knees, but he was okay. He was breathing. He was alive. Where are we? He asked. Checked her scanner. They were on the middle decks now, closer to the populated areas. but the creatures were still following them, and there was something else on the screen, something that made her pause. A single dot moving differently from the others. It was larger, slower, coming from the same direction as the swarm but staying behind them. Threat level unknown. Danger classification unable to process. That is not good, said quietly. What is not good? Looked at her screen and made a terrified sound. What does unknown mean? Why cannot it process? It means there is something else down there, something bigger than the others. As if answering her words, a sound came from the tunnel above them, not the high scream of the smaller creatures. This was deeper, louder. It was a roar that shook the walls and made the lights flicker. Looked up at the opening they had just come through. She could see shadows moving in the darkness above, and behind those shadows, something massive was approaching. Her scanner updated one more time. Recommend. The message did not finish. The screen filled with static and error codes. Then it went dark. Looked at her dead scanner. She looked at the opening above her. She looked at who was now crying silently. Then she smiled. Well, she said, this just got interesting. The massive creature dropped from the ceiling like a nightmare made real. It was 3 times the size of the smaller ones, with armor so thick it looked like stone. Its eyes, there were at least 20 of them, glowed with a cold intelligence. This was not a mindless beast. This was a leader. Pushed behind her. Run, she said. Find someone, get help. But what about you? I will be right behind you. Now go. Ran. His feet slapped against the metal floor as he disappeared around a corner. Hoped he would make it. She hoped he would find security or soldiers or anyone who could help. But right now, she had other problems. The creature studied her. It tilted its massive head from side to side, like a dog looking at something it did not understand. Perhaps it had never seen a human before. Perhaps it was wondering why she was not running. Scanner was still dead. The screen showed nothing but static. She tapped it once, twice. Nothing. The creature took a step forward. Its clawed feet made deep scratches in the metal floor. Raised her pistol. Let me guess, you are the one in charge. The creature roared. The sound was so loud that felt it in her chest. Normal people would have been paralyzed by that sound. Normal people would have fallen to their knees and begged for mercy. Was not normal. She fired. The blue energy bolt hit the creature's chest and bounced off. The armor was too thick. The creature did not even slow down. It swung one of its massive arms, ducked. The claws passed over her head, close enough to cut a few strands of her hair. She rolled to the side and came up firing again. This time she aimed for the joints, the places where the armor was thinner. One shot hit the creature's shoulder. It screamed in pain and anger. Dark blood sprayed from the wound. Good, it could be hurt. That was all needed to know. The creature attacked again, faster this time. Moved with it, staying just ahead of its claws. She was smaller and quicker. It was stronger and had longer reach. Neither of them had an advantage. They danced through the corridor, trading attacks. Fired whenever she had a clear shot. The creature swung its arms and snapped its jaws. Once, it came close enough to tear her sleeve. Another time, its tail, she had not noticed the tail before, swept her legs out from under her. She hit the ground hard. The creature raised its foot to crush her. Rolled. The foot came down where her head had been, cracking the metal floor like glass. She kept rolling until she hit a wall, then pushed herself up and kept fighting. Her scanner beeped. She glanced at it. The screen had come back to life, filled with warnings and alerts. Danger level updated, error. Threat assessment, error. Human user, evacuate immediately. This unit cannot guarantee. The message dissolved into more static. Dodged another attack, a fast strike aimed at her stomach. She twisted in midair, feeling the claws brush against her side, and landed in a crouch. Who gave you permission to panic? She asked the scanner. The device did not answer. It was too busy trying to calculate odds that made no sense. Smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had stopped caring about odds a long time ago. She changed her tactics. Instead of staying back and shooting, she moved closer. The creature was not expecting this. It tried to grab her, but she was too fast. She slid between its legs, firing up into its belly as she passed. The creature screamed. More blood poured from the new wounds, but it was not dead yet. It was not even close to dead. It turned to face her, angrier than before. Its eyes glowed brighter. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of teeth like knives. His pistol beeped a warning. The charge pack was almost empty. She had maybe 3 shots left. 3 shots would not be enough to kill this thing. She needed another plan. She looked around the corridor. There were pipes on the walls, carrying water and air to different parts of the station. There were cables on the ceiling, thick with electricity. And there was a door at the end of the hallway, a heavy blast door that could seal off sections of the station in an emergency. An idea formed in her mind. "Come on," she said to the creature. "Follow me." She turned and ran toward the blast door. The creature roared and chased her. Its heavy footsteps shook the floor with every step. Reached the door and stopped. She turned to face the creature. It was coming fast, ready to crush her against the metal. At the last moment, she jumped to the side. The creature could not stop. Its momentum carried it forward. It slammed into the blast door with a sound like thunder. The door bent inward but did not break. The creature was stunned. For a few seconds it did not move. Did not waste those seconds. She ran to the control panel on the wall and slammed her hand against the emergency button. Alarms started to sound. Red lights flashed, and the blast door began to close. The creature shook its head, trying to clear its vision. It saw the door moving and understood what was happening. It tried to back away, to escape before the door sealed shut. But it was too slow. The door caught it around the middle and kept closing. The creature screamed as the pressure increased. It pushed against the door with all its strength, but the door was stronger. There was a terrible sound, a wet crunching sound, and then silence. The creature was dead. Half of its body was on one side of the door, half was on the other. Sat down on the floor. Her body ached. Her hands were shaking slightly. She had used a lot of energy in that fight. Her scanner beeped again. She looked at the screen. Threat level, severe. Multiple HOSTILES approaching. Primary threat, ELIAMINATD. Thanks for the update, said. Very helpful. The smaller creatures would have heard the fight. They would be coming to investigate. She needed to move, to get somewhere safe. But first, she needed a moment to breathe. She closed her eyes and listened to the station around her. The alarms were still sounding. The red lights were still flashing. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear screaming, people discovering what was happening in the lower decks. This was not a random attack. These creatures had not wandered into the station by accident. They had come here with a purpose. They had come here to take over. Opened her eyes. She stood up, checked her pistol, and started walking. She had killed their leader. That would slow them down, but it would not stop them. There were more of them, hiding in the vents and tunnels and dark places of the station. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the station, there was something else. Something that had sent these creatures. Something that was making more of them. Needed to find it. She needed to destroy it. Her scanner showed the way, a path through the hostile territory toward the source of the infestation. It was not a safe path. It was not an easy path, but it was the only path that mattered. She started walking. Behind her, the first of the smaller creatures reached the blast door. They found the body of their leader and began to scream, but did not look back. She never looked back. There was only forward. In the main security center of Emerald Drift, chaos had taken over. Officers ran between screens, shouting orders and calling for backup. Alarms filled the air with their constant screaming. Red lights painted everything the color of blood. Security chief stood in the middle of it all, calm as a stone in a river. He was an older man with gray hair and deep lines on his face. He had served 30 years in Galactic Alliance law enforcement. He had seen rebellions, invasions, and disasters of every kind, but he had never seen anything like this. "Report," he said. His voice was not loud, but everyone heard him. A young officer turned from his screen. His name was, and he was of a species with pale scales and nervous eyes. "Unknown species, sir. Origin unknown. Threat level unknown. Our database has no record of them." "How many?" "We estimate between 300 and 500. They are concentrated in the lower decks, but they are spreading upward." Looked at the main screen. It showed a map of the station, covered in red dots. The dots were moving, climbing through the structure like a disease spreading through a body. "Evacuate the lower levels," he ordered. "All civilians to the upper decks. I want blast doors sealed at every junction." "Already done, sir, but we have a problem." "Just one." Hesitated. There is a human in the middle of it all. Turned to look at the young officer. "A human?" "Yes, sir. A security consultant named. She was escorting a trader when the attack began. Her signal has been moving through the lower decks for the past hour." "Moving toward the exit?" "No, sir. Moving toward the infestation. Her signal keeps going deeper." Frowned. He walked to another screen and pulled up his file. He read quickly. "Freelancer. Former Earth military, special operations. 17 successful high-risk missions on this station. Combat ratings that made the computer throw up error codes." "Get me her," he said. Another officer pulled up the data. Heart rate, 95 beats per minute. Blood pressure, slightly elevated. Stress hormones, present but manageable. Stared at the numbers. "That cannot be right." "Sir." "Her heart rate is 95. She is in a combat zone full of hostile creatures, and her heart rate is 95. Shook his head slowly. "That is the heart rate of someone going for a light jog." The officers around him exchanged looks. They did not understand. How could they? They were not human. A new signal appeared on the screen. It was the trader. He had reached one of the evacuation points and was being brought to the security center. Ordered him brought to the command room. When arrived, he looked terrible. His blue skin was almost white. His 4 eyes were red from crying. He was shaking so badly that he could barely stand. "Tell me what happened," said. Told him. He told him about the creatures coming from the vents. He told him about running through the dark corridors. He told him about the maintenance tunnels and the smaller creature that had found them. He told him about the massive beast that had dropped from the ceiling. "She told me to run," said. His voice was barely a whisper. "She told me to find help, and then she turned to face that thing, alone." "And she survived," said. It was not a question. Nodded. "The last I saw she was still fighting, but how could she survive? That creature was massive, it was impossible." "Humans are good at impossible things," said. He turned back to the main screen. Signal was still moving, still going deeper into hostile territory. "Get me a communication line to her. I want to talk to her directly." It took several minutes to establish the connection. The station systems were damaged in many places, and the creatures seemed to interfere with electronic signals. But finally, a voice came through the speakers. "This is, who am I talking to?" Her voice was calm. Not forced calm, not pretending to be calm. Actually calm, like she was ordering coffee instead of fighting for her life. "This is Security Chief. We have eyes on your position. What is your status?" "Alive, moving toward the source of the infestation. I think they have a nest somewhere in the water treatment facility." Checked the map. The water treatment facility was at the very heart of the lower decks. It was also the area with the highest concentration of hostiles. We are mobilizing a strike team, he said. Hold position, wait for backup. Negative. Excuse me. I cannot wait. These creatures are producing more of themselves. Every minute we waste, there are more of them. By the time your team gets here, it will be too late. Gripped the edge of his console. Your scanner is showing danger levels we have never seen before. Our systems cannot even process the threat you are facing. You need to. My scanner is having a nervous breakdown, interrupted. I am not. Send your team if you want, but I am not waiting. Out. The communication line went dead. For a long moment, no one in the security center spoke. They all stared at the screen, watching the single dot that represented the human woman moving steadily towards certain death. Was the first to speak. Sir, should we send the team anyway? Was silent for a moment. Then he turned to his officers. Pull up everything we have on human military history, everything about how they fight, how they survive, what makes them different from us. Sir, I want to understand what we are dealing with, not the creatures, the human. The data came up on multiple screens. Battles where humans had been outnumbered and still won. Disasters where humans had survived when all logic said they should have died. Stories of human soldiers holding positions against impossible odds, not because they had to, but because they chose to. Read the reports quietly. Around him, his officers read as well. Their faces showed confusion, then disbelief, then something like fear. Their fear response, one officer said slowly. It does not work like ours. When we feel fear, we run or freeze. When they feel fear, they fight harder, finished. Fear does not stop them, it fuels them. He looked at the screen again. Signal had reached the outer edge of the water treatment facility. She was stopping, probably assessing the situation. Send the team, said. Full combat, but tell them not to engage directly. Their job is to support, not to lead. And if she is dead by the time they arrive. Watch the screen. Signal started moving again, directly into the heart of the nest. She will not be dead, he said. I have seen her file. I have seen her heart rate. That woman is not going there to die. He paused, then added quietly, I think she is going there to win. On the screen, surrounded by hundreds of red dots, the single green signal that was kept moving forward. It did not stop. It did not slow down. It did not hesitate. And watching her, every officer in that room began to understand something that most species never fully grasped. Humans were not dangerous because they were strong or fast or clever. Humans were dangerous because they simply refused to stop. The water treatment facility was not a facility anymore. It was a nest. Stood at the entrance and looked at what had once been a clean, organized space full of machines and pipes. Now everything was covered in something dark and wet. The walls dripped with strange fluids. The floor was soft under her boots. And everywhere, on the walls, on the ceiling, on every surface, there were eggs. Hundreds of eggs, maybe thousands. They pulsed with a faint glow, like heartbeats made of light. Some were small, no bigger than her fist. Others were large enough to hold creatures the size of the one she had killed earlier. In the center of it all, suspended in a web of organic material, was the queen. She was enormous, bigger than anything had ever seen. Her body was long and segmented, like a giant worm wrapped in armor. Her head had no eyes that could see, but she knew the queen could sense her. She could feel the attention, heavy and cold, pressing against her mind. This was the source. This was what had to be destroyed. Scanner was working again, barely. The screen flickered with warnings and errors, unable to process what it was seeing. Threat level, calculating. HOSTILES in vicinity, calculating. Survival probability, error. Helpful as always, muttered. She looked around the room, planning. Direct attack would not work. The queen was too large and there were too many eggs. If she started shooting, she would wake every creature in the nest. She needed something bigger, something final. Her pack held emergency supplies, things she always carried on dangerous missions. A medical kit, extra charge packs, ration bars, and 2 small canisters marked with warning symbols. Thermite compounds, used for cutting through metal in emergencies, or for starting fires that nothing could put out. Started working. She found a clear spot near the entrance and began building. She connected wires, attached detonators, and welded the canisters together. Her hands moved quickly and surely, doing work they had done many times before. Her comm crackled. "This is security, Chief. We have a team approaching your position. They will be there in 15 minutes. "I do not have 15 minutes, said. She kept working while she talked. "These eggs are close to hatching. If they open, you will have 1,000 new hostiles. "What are you planning?" "Fire, a lot of fire." There was a pause. "The water treatment facility is connected to the main life support systems. If you start a fire there—" "I know. The smoke will spread through the ventilation. You will need to shut down the air systems in the lower decks for at least an hour. That will leave hundreds of areas without oxygen. Those areas are already full of creatures. Anyone still there is already dead." Finished her work and picked up the device. It was crude but effective. "Trust me, Chief. This is the only way." Another pause. Then's voice came back, tired but accepting. "Understood. We will shut down the systems when you give the signal." "Good, out." She stood up and looked at the Queen. The massive creature had not moved, but could feel that something had changed. The Queen knew she was here. The Queen knew she was a threat. Slowly, eggs around the room began to shake. The first one cracked open. Started running. She moved through the nest, jumping over eggs and sliding under webs of organic material. Behind her, more eggs hatched. Small creatures, bobbies she supposed, crawled out and started following her. They were not fast yet, not coordinated, but there were so many of them. The Queen screamed. It was not like the screams of the other creatures. This sound was deeper, older, full of ancient rage. The walls shook. The fluids on the floor rippled. And everywhere in the nest, adult creatures woke up and started to hunt. Reached the center of the room, directly under the Queen. She attached her device to a support beam, a thick metal pillar that held up part of the ceiling. Then she set the timer. 60 seconds. 60 seconds to get out. 60 seconds before this whole place burned. She turned and ran. The creatures came from everywhere. They dropped from the ceiling and crawled from the walls. They blocked her path and lunged at her from the shadows. Did not stop. She shot the ones in front of her and dodged the ones beside her. When her pistol ran out of charge, she drew her knife and kept fighting. A claw caught her shoulder. She felt hot blood run down her arm. She kept running. A tail wrapped around her ankle. She fell, rolled, cut herself free. She kept running. 40 seconds. The exit was ahead of her. She could see the corridor beyond, empty and waiting. But between her and the door were at least 20 creatures, packed together, waiting for her. She did not slow down. Ran straight at them. At the last moment she dropped into a slide, her body low to the ground. The creatures grabbed at her, but she was moving too fast. She slid between their legs, under their claws, through the smallest gaps. She came out the other side covered in their blood and her own, but she was through. 20 seconds. She hit the corridor running. Behind her, the creatures poured out of the nest, chasing her. The Queen screamed again, louder this time. 10 seconds. Saw a blast door ahead. She reached the control panel and slammed her hand against it. The door started to close. 5 seconds. The first creatures reached the door. They tried to get through, but the gap was too narrow. They screamed and clawed at the metal. 0. The explosion was not loud. Thermite does not explode the way bombs do. Instead, there was a deep roar, like a giant taking a breath. And then the fire started. Through the small window in the blast door watched the nest burn. The eggs caught fire first, their shells cracking in the heat, then the organic material on the walls, then the creatures themselves. The queen screamed one last time, a sound of pure agony, and then she was silent. The fire spread fast, consuming everything. Smoke filled the facility, thick and black, but it had nowhere to go, had shut down the ventilation just like he promised. Everything in that nest would burn, nothing would survive. Sat down against the wall. Her shoulder was bleeding badly. Her legs were shaking. Her hands, which had been steady through everything, finally began to tremble. Her scanner beeped. She looked at the screen. Threat level decreasing. HFY Stories, calculating. Nest DSTRYD, confirmed. Good job, she said to the scanner. Only took you all day. The device did not respond. It just kept showing numbers and data, trying to make sense of what had happened. Closed her eyes and leaned her head back against the wall. She could hear footsteps in the distance, the strike team finally arriving. They would find her here, covered in blood and burns, sitting next to a door that led to fire. They would have questions. They always had questions. But for now, just wanted to rest, just for a moment, just long enough to remember what it felt like to not be running. Her comm crackled one last time. This is, our sensors show the nest is destroyed. What is your status? Opened her eyes and smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. Status is alive, she said. Status is successful. Status is ready for a very long nap. There was a pause. Then's voice came back, and for the first time he sounded almost amused. Understood. We are sending medical teams now. Try not to kill anyone on the way out. No promises, said. And then she closed her eyes again and waited for help to arrive. Behind her, through the small window, the fire continued to burn. The creatures were gone. The eggs were ash. The queen was dead. The station was safe. And somewhere in the security center, a young officer named was adding a note to a file. Human threat response, unpredictable. Recommend continued observation. Do not engage. He did not know it yet, but that note would become famous among the species of the Galactic Alliance. It would be quoted in training manuals and discussed in military academies. It would become the standard warning for anyone who thought about challenging a human in combat. Because the truth was simple. When everything else fails, when the scanners break down and the odds become impossible, humans just keep going. They do not stop, they do not give up, they do not surrender. They just find a way to win.